Hey everyone, welcome back to Mugworts. This week my kids have been home for most of the week, so I decided to take my pottery from downstairs in the cold basement and bring it up into the kitchen where I can watch them beat each other up and make lots of loud noises. The wind chill's been like -20 for the last 3 or 4 days or something like that, so it has been really cold and we all have been stuck inside together, so I decided to do a little challenge and take one of my pins from Pinterest that I really have liked for a while and try and create it myself. I tried to find the original artist. The link that is on Pinterest takes you to Etsy, but the shop seems not real. I did show the shop name and what I found on Pinterest at the very end on a printed out piece of paper. So if you want to try to find it yourself, go ahead and maybe just send me a link or a comment and I can credit the original artist, but I literally couldn't find it anywhere. In the shop on Etsy, it looks totally fake. So I wasn't quite sure what to do. I'm not sure where you can get these actually anywhere online, but I found my inspiration on Pinterest, and I decided to, instead of having it just be a house, to make it into a planter. I'm planning on putting some succulents and cactuses in here. I don't quite finish the whole thing in this video. I still have to make a base, and I'm going to make some tiny pots to go with it as well, so it kind of matches the inspiration. And they made their plants out of clay, but I am planning on going out and getting some small succulents to actually put in these pots. Again, as you can see here, I am in my kitchen, so the angles aren't great. I plan on trying to change things up a little bit for future videos and trying to make it more interesting, as well as music choices here to come. But here you can see I'm kind of just making my own template and making two sides so that it will be a 3D house. And I'm just cutting it out of some really soft clay and using my heat gun to solidify it so that when you go to put it together, it's nice and firm and it won't sag at all when you stand it up, I guess. That actually used to be a really big issue for me, where I was not patient enough to let it dry as long as it should have, and then when you go to put it together and stand it up, the middle tends to slump a little bit and then your whole pot becomes distorted. I do realize once I get this all put together in a few minutes here that the bottom is not straight, so the whole thing is a little tipsy, but I wanted it to be whimsical anyway, and it's just gonna be for me. So maybe someday in the future, if I make any templates, I actually got a 3D printer and I'm planning on making some cookie cutters from them to sell and use myself, which would be really fun. It would be just about the same size as big as I could go with my 3D printer. It's not a huge one, so someday I will be able to design and make simpler cookie cutters that will really make good straight edges that will be pretty much perfect once you go to put it together, as long as you let it dry long enough so that it can have a nice 90-degree angle. The face of the house here is the most exciting part, so I spent a lot of time adding details like the edging around the windows and a little awning to go on top, and kind of carving the door out so that looks more realistic when I go to paint it once it's bisqued. I like to keep my slip in a squeeze bottle like this. It makes it a little easier getting it out. This slip is pretty thick, so it was a little bit of a challenge to squeeze it out, and the tip is not very fine, so it comes out pretty quick. I think in the end I ended up squirting it out on my sponge and just using my finger to kind of smooth it on. It's a little bit easier of a process that way as well. I wanted to make little roof tiles to go on the awning as well. That was a little bit of a challenge to figure out how to do it. I ended up just rolling the clay and then cutting it in half on both sides so that it was sort of a U shape, and then using the slip to kind of glue it on. And I really just slathered the slip on nice and thick, and the clay was nice and dry, so it absorbed the slip and it acts like glue and sticks on there really well. My clay was almost too dry here, and the tiles, or the shingles I should say, started to crack a little bit, but I think it gives it that little bit of extra texture is kind of fun, and will make it, like I said, more whimsical, and it will be fun to glaze. I'm gonna try to do a wash over top with a terracotta colorant I bought from US Pigment, and it should give it that kind of like Southwest looking, I don't know, design, I guess. Santa Fe, maybe. One of my kids called it a Mexico house, but it's really cute. After I put it all together, I do have to build a base for it still, to sit little pots and things, and then I can throw it in my bisque kiln. It has been so cold lately that I actually can't run my kiln until I think it's something like 34 degrees or something. It's out in my garage, so I think later this week or early next week it's supposed to be a little bit warmer. So hopefully if all of my pottery dries by then, I can run the bisque kiln, and then I can glaze everything and show you what it looks like when it's completely done. I know that a lot of my videos started to be more glaze oriented, so I will make a part 2 of this that is the glazing and then the final firing and taking out of the kiln, so you can see exactly what I do to get my colors and all of the things. I think that I am going to use maybe satin patina as the outer part of the house, and then I'm not sure, maybe Albany slip brown or just like an underglaze to do the roof tiles to make it terracotta color. And maybe in the future, if I were to do other houses, I could get some actual terracotta, but it doesn't fire at exactly the same temperature. So I would have to use either all the same type of clay and just try to change the color, or instead of going all the way up to my normal firing temperature for these, I could just leave it down at like the terracotta temperature. Since it's not going to be like a mug that you're going to be drinking out of, it should be fine. It will be holding water essentially when you go to water the plant, but I am going to plan on putting some holes in the bottom so that I can have some drainage for that. Once the sides are firm enough, I will score it, and then I will put on a whole bunch of slip, and I add this little extra piece to go on the inside to give it a little bit more structure. That way it's not just holding on to that tiny part in the corner of each side. This gives it a little something else to grip onto. And as you can see, all my clay's nice and firm, so the moisture from the slip will absorb into the drier clay, and it bonds together, so it really is nice and like glued essentially. And then I go through and I fill in all the cracks with really soft clay and kind of scrape it in and just fill in where it needs to be so it looks like it's all one piece. Luckily this clay doesn't have grog in it either, so I can use my sponge and sponge it off without it having a coarse outer surface, where a lot of times if you use something with speckles or a normal slab building clay, it can have some grit in it, and when you go to wipe away your surface or try to smooth it out, it actually takes off the smoother particles and then it leaves behind this bumpy surface. And if that happens to you and you're new to pottery, after it's bisqued, you can just get it wet and sand it down, and it will take some of that grit out, and it'll make it easier for you to put your underglaze or glaze on, and it won't leave that rough surface. So that is something I got lucky with. This type of clay doesn't have any grog, so I can go ahead and wipe away any of my excess in it, and it leaves a really nice smooth surface. These next few clips are just more of the same, adding in all of the sides and trying to seal up the structure as much as I can so it won't have any leaks when I go to water the plants that I'm going to put in here. I am moving from side to side, making sure that everything is square. As you can see, it does still have that little bit of a lean. I try to cut the corner of the taller side of the structure to level it out a little bit, but my clay was so hard already that I was afraid I was going to crack it if I tried anymore. So I think it'll look cute just as it is, and it gives it a little bit more of that charming appeal, and you can definitely tell it's handmade, which I think is special. Next, I found, after building a bunch of gingerbread houses this fall and winter, it's a good idea to cut that top wall at an angle so that when you go to put the roof on, it doesn't have this funny gap. Cutting it at a 45-degree angle-ish helps the roof sit more flush and doesn't bump it up so there's like a gap underneath the wall that you have to then fill in with slip. So it just gives it a little bit of a easier time and a less work for you to do if you just go ahead and cut that edge before you put the roof on. After your roof is nice and secured, then you can go around and trim it all up so it looks like it should, and the more level and nice you can make it before you put these shingles on helps as well. The shingles are already kind of wonky and gives it that fun cartoonish look, so this will help make those easier to stick on as well. I decided to leave the hole for the plants right in this part of the roof, but I wanted it to look more finished, so I made a roof kind of, but I left a big hole out of it, and I'm still gonna cover that with shingles as well, just to give it all a more cohesive look. I tried to see what it looked like without the shingles, and I think it does look better all with shingles on everything so that it's all the same. Here's where you can go around and fill up any gaps that you might have with some slip, and then take your finger and run it along and rub it in all the little holes and cracks and crevices, and then go back over it with your sponge and take off any excess. This part is super satisfying for me. I really love this sponge. I can't remember what it's called, but it is like a magic eraser. It takes off the finest little amount and it makes everything so smooth, and every fingerprint you have, you literally just run this over and it'll erase it just like magic. I found rolling up some semi-dry clay in strips and then cutting down the side is the perfect way to make these tiles, and I made a whole bunch of them before I even started laying them on so that I could figure out what way I wanted to put them on and which way would look the best. I kind of tried it out before I put the slip on so I could take it off and they wouldn't get all mushy and mess everything up, and I think they turned out pretty great. All right, here comes the wonkiest part. Scratch and score, and then load that thing up with slip, and then put all your crazy tiles on the top. And here I will show you my inspiration picture from Pinterest. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching part 1.